So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm continuing on with my Middle-earth film reviews with The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. But, just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but if you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check the podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast, of course, and please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. Also, I should say, just before I get into my review of the first in the Hobbit sequels, yes, in the second of the Hobbit trilogy is a better way of putting that, just before I get into my review of this film, I went swimming earlier today, and when I go swimming, I've spoken about this on the channel before, I get this thing that I like to call fuzzy thinking. So if at any point in this review today I don't make sense and I don't correct myself and I just go on and what I've said doesn't really add up, it's because of the way my brain's working right now, because there's something about when you go swimming and the effect it has on your thinking throughout the rest of the day, So I don't know how this podcast is going to turn out, but if it doesn't totally make sense, and if all my points don't totally come to fruition, blame the fact that I've got fuzzy thinking right now after going swimming earlier today. But other than that, this should be a great and fun podcast to listen to and or watch. So, let's get into it. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. The first Hobbit sequel, and it's once again directed by Peter Jackson, and starring many of the same cast of the first Hobbit movie, and we get some new cast additions, some more returning cast from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, such as Orlando Bloom as Legolas. And I should say, first things first, as I say at the start of all of my Middle-earth film reviews, whether it's my Lord of the Rings film reviews and my review of the first Hobbit movie, I have not read the book that this film is based on. I say that at the start of all my Lord of the Rings film reviews. I've not read any of the Lord of the Rings books, and I've not read the Hobbit book either. So if I get any of the details wrong and any of the names of characters or locations in these films, I do apologise. All I'm going off is what I've seen in these films, and I don't always have the best memory about remembering certain details. I love the fantastical world of these films. I love the way Peter Jackson's Middle-earth comes to life in these films, but I just often forget the names of certain locations and certain characters, so I do apologise if that happens. And I should also say that I absolutely love this film. This is my favourite Hobbit movie, because as much as I love the first Hobbit film, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, this one opened my eyes even more to what the cinema going experience could be like, because I spoke about this quite a bit in my review of the first Hobbit movie, about how that was my Fellowship of the Ring. That was my introduction to Middle-earth and my introduction to what the cinema going experience could be like, because before I watched that first Hobbit movie, I hadn't had a cinema experience where I went, wow, this is the power of cinema. And then I watched the first Hobbit film and I was like, oh, I get it. And I didn't really say this, although I did kind of say it in so many words, but the thing is about the first Hobbit movie, I don't think I would be here now reviewing films, and for some people, they might prefer that, but still, I don't think I would be here now reviewing films if it wasn't for that first Hobbit movie, And I feel that even more with the second Hobbit film, because I remember getting to Christmas 2013 when this film came out and being in the car on the way to the cinema to watch this film and physically shaking. I've only ever done that with a couple of films whilst I've been travelling to the cinema to see. I think I had that with The Force Awakens as well. I was physically shaking going on the journey to the cinema because I wanted the film to be so good. You know, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, I've become obsessed with that film since I saw it in 2012, and throughout the whole of 2013 until this film came out, because it came out on Christmas 2013, as I've already said, I was counting down the days to watching this film. I wouldn't have stopped watching the trailers that were released. I'd watch them every day on repeat. Every day I'd come back from school, I would watch the trailer for The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug, because I wanted to see where the journey went with these characters. I wanted to see the sequel. But at the same time, though, as with most sequels, I was really worried. I was worried that it wasn't going to work, because that's the thing with, you know, a lot of sequels. People say, oh, they're not as good as the original, and there are very little examples. Although I can think of quite a few off the top of my head, like, if you want to stay in the world of Middle-earth for a sec, The Two Towers. Other great film sequels include Empire Strikes Back, Shrek 2, The Godfather Part 2. I mean, there are some really good, you know, sequels out there, but there's also some really bad ones. And I was afraid that Desolation of Smaug was going to be a really bad sequel to a film I absolutely adore. And I was sitting in the cinema waiting for this film to start, and moments in, and I mean moments in, right with the Howard Shore score starting at the beginning of the film, which, you know, goes like da 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 bum 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 da 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 da. The way the score opens the film, I was back. I was immersed into the world of Middle-earth once again, and I was completely hooked into the opening flashback scene we get with Gandalf the Grey and Thorin. How they talk about their quest to reclaim their homeland, you know, how they're talking about how they want to reclaim the Lonely Mountain. I was completely hooked, and my engagement with the film didn't stop throughout its entire 2.5-hour runtime. I think that's how long the theatrical cut of this film is, because much like the Lord of the Rings films, and much like the first Hobbit movie, and the third Hobbit movie for that matter, but I'll talk about that in more detail when I review that film in the next couple of days, but much like the other Middle-earth films that Peter Jackson has directed, this also has an extended edition, and I'll talk about the extended edition to The Desolation of Smaug a bit later in this podcast. But anyway, sticking on with what I was saying, I was completely hooked into this film and hooked into everything going on, and I ended up loving it more than the first Hobbit movie. I know for a lot of people, you know, a lot of people when they talk about the Hobbit films, they say, oh, it's the first one that I liked the most, because the other two didn't really live up to the hype, and I completely understand why. You know, I'm not sure I've already spoken about this yet, because again, fuzzy thinking, as I spoke about earlier on in this podcast, but I don't know if I would like these films now if they came out in the cinema today. If I went to go and watch these films at the cinema in 2024, I'm not sure if they would work for me because of the sort of films that they are. They're very CGI heavy, and I often criticise too much CGI in films nowadays. But the thing is, though, this film just came out at the perfect time for me. It came out at a time where it was everything I needed to see in the film, and it was opening my eyes up more to what the cinema experience could be, to how a sequel could actually be better than the original film, could actually be better than the first film, could actually be better than its predecessor. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd watched Empire Strikes Back, you know, the second of the Star Wars movies, and I'd seen Two Towers, the second of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, before watching this film, but I hadn't seen them in the cinema. I've seen them now in the cinema. I've seen both Empire Strikes Back and Two Towers in the cinema, some of my favourite films of all time. But I hadn't seen them in the cinema when I watched this film. And this was the first sequel I remember watching in the cinema, and I remember going, wow. Somehow they made it better than the first film. How is that possible? And again, The first Hobbit movie opened my eyes up to the cinematic experience, to what going to the cinema could entail in the best way possible. And the Desolation of Smaug opened my eyes up to it more. I could not believe the magic of cinema I was witnessing whilst I was watching this film. And I know some people might be watching or listening to the review today going, "What? You felt that with Desolation of Smaug?" It's all subjective. I don't know what to say. I really don't, because it is a bit of an enigma for me. I genuinely think if I watch these films now, they wouldn't work for me as well as they do. I watched this film at a time where it all just clicked. It was the film I needed. It was a film I was excited to see. And you know what? Everything I was excited to see about this film delivered. Especially Smaug. You know, with that glimpse we get with Smaug at the end of the first Hobbit movie, we just see his eye. I couldn't stop thinking about that throughout the whole of 2013, leading up to the release of this film. The way Smaug is used in this movie, perfection. Chef's kiss, you know? Everything with Smaug makes me love this film so much more. And it's not just Smaug, though. Smaug doesn't come into the film until the third act, really. He's not in a lot of this film when I was rewatching it recently. I thought he was in this film a lot more. Actually, he's not in the Hobbit trilogy as much as you would think he is. It's the effect that, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as Smaug, because it is a performance. He isn't just voicing Smaug. If you watch behind the scenes, and I'll talk about this in more detail, it's very much like Andy Serkis playing Gollum in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and in the first Hobbit movie. It's a motion capture performance, and you really feel that with Benedict Cumberbatch playing Smaug. I think a lot of what Benedict Cumberbatch brings to the role makes it so memorable. He's not actually in a lot of the film. Smaug's not in a lot of the entire Hobbit trilogy. He's in the third act of this film, and he's in the first, 10 minutes of the third film. You know, he's not in a lot. But the thing is, it wasn't just Smaug which made me love this film. It was all the stuff before. I can't even speak. It was all the stuff before Smaug as well. You know, right from the opening with the meeting between Thorin and Gandalf. Love that. Then I loved the reintroduction to Bilbo Baggins, once again played by Martin Freeman in this film, and how in that meeting between Thorin and Gandalf, like, we need a burglar, and a good one. I forgot which of the characters says that line. I think it's Gandalf, or they might both say it, actually. I think Gandalf goes, "We need a burglar," and then Thorin says, "and a good one." It's something like that. I'm probably butchering the lines up and remembering them horribly. After they say those lines, they cut to Bilbo Baggins. It's brilliant. He's watching over the scene where the orcs come in, because this film picks up straight after the finale of the first Hobbit movie, where they have that confrontation with the orcs, and then we get introduced to, Bjorn, which is a shapeshifter. Apologies if I mispronounced his name there. And then after that, we get the flies and spiders. We get the Mirkwood forest sequence with all these giant spiders who apparently Shelob's children or something. That's what my brother told me a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, really? So I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, that's kind of a cool detail, a little golden nugget for a little piece of golden nugget, I don't know what I'm saying. A little piece of information that you might find kind of interesting about this film. But I love the spider sequence. Watching that in the cinema, God, it was something special. I've got vivid memories of watching that whole Mirkwood spider sequence from this film in the cinema and thinking, I've never seen anything like this, and I'm loving every single moment. I'm terrified for these characters. I'm terrified for Bilbo and all the dwarfs, but I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. And then we see Legolas again. And we see the Woodland Realm, and we are introduced to Legolas' father, Thandruil, if I get that name correct, and Tauriel, which is the she-elf that Legolas has a bit of a thing for, And I really love the world building there, and the production design, the set design for the Woodland Realm is hauntingly beautiful. I really love all that, and then the interaction between Thorin and Thandruil, which they tease in the first one, the prologue for the first film. Love all that, and I don't care what anybody says. I love the barrel sequence. I love the barrel chase where the dwarfs are all on the barrels and the elves are chasing after them and the orcs are chasing after them. It becomes this huge chase sequence. I know people out there don't like that sequence because it's not in the books or whatever, it's not in the Hobbit book. Whatever. I don't care. That sequence was, for me, again, one of the most enthralling experiences I've ever had in the cinema. Much like the spider sequence, I was sat there thinking, oh my god, they're all escaping on the barrels? Wow. And then the orcs are coming. The elves! I mean, bear in mind, I was much younger when I watched this film, but I'm thinking, God, what's going to happen now? It's brilliant. And Bill was just there, hanging on the side of a barrel, and God, I love that sequence with the Howard Shore musical score, you know, ba-da, 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 ba-ba. I mean, I'm, singing it horribly, but I love the barrel sequence, and I love that moment with Bomber, the fat dwarf, kind of like me, in the barrel sequence, where he somehow rolls, the barrel that he's in rolls off the river and onto the land, and he starts fighting all the orcs in this barrel. If you've seen the film, you'd probably know what sequence we're talking about. It's one of the most mind-boggling CGI sequences I've seen in a film, period. I remember watching that in the cinema, and not only did I love it, when I watched it in the cinema, I heard some people on the... Is that the left? I don't know. I get my left and my right mixed up, but I remember hearing some people on the left of me cheer after that sequence ended with Bomber and the barrel, and God, I love the whole barrel sequence. And then I love how this film slows down for a little bit. I mean, it doesn't slow down as in it gets boring or tedious to watch. It just slows down for a little bit as we're introduced to Lake Town and Bard, a man of Lake Town, played by Luke Evans. If I get that, is it Luke Evans? I just want to make sure I've got the cast here. Yeah, I was right there. I don't know why I doubted myself. Yes, I don't know how we get introduced to Bard, a man of Lake Town, and we get a bit more of the prologue about how Smaug was almost defeated when he tried to take Erebor on the Lonely Mountain. I love all that stuff. Stephen Fry is the mayor of Lake Town. I'm not even sure if that's his title in the film, but he plays it well, and you can clearly see that Stephen Fry is having a lot of fun playing that character. Alfred, who is the mayor of Lake Town's assistant. I like Alfred in this film. I know why a lot of people don't like the Alfred character overall, and I completely understand why with the way he is used in the third film. And I will talk about that in more detail, but I like him in this film. I do. Yeah, and I love all the stuff at Lake Town. And then the dwarves go into Lonely Mountain, and oh my god, the sequences between Bilbo and Smaug. Perfection, It's Sherlock and John Watson. Literally, it's a Sherlock reunion in this film, because obviously Benedict Cumberbatch, who voices Smaug, and Martin Freeman, who plays Bilbo Baggins in all three Hobbit films, worked together on the Sherlock series, which was airing simultaneously, if I remember correctly. Was Sherlock coming out in 2013? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when Sherlock Season 3 came out. One of my favourite seasons of any TV show is Sherlock Season 3. Sherlock Season 2 and Sherlock Season 3, sign right here, are masterpieces. I love both of those seasons of television, and they were going on around the same time these films were being released, if I remember correctly. So it was a bit... I remember watching that in the cinema and thinking, not only is the scene absolutely incredible, and not only am I eating up every single second of it, it's Sherlock and John Watson in a different form. I love the sequences between I love all the dialogue between Bilbo and Smaug, and how Smaug says, "Barrel Rider." I can't do a Smaug impression. I tried then, I don't think I did a bad job trying, but just the way he says, "Barrel Rider." Oh God, gives me chills now just thinking about it. And then you get the sequences between the dwarves trying to defeat Smaug and Smaug's confrontation with Tauriel. God, I love all of that, and I love the design of Smaug. Love it so much, and the end of the film. God, it's great. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care that this film ends on a cliffhanger, because I love the cliffhanger. In fact, for any film that's a franchise, this is my favourite cliffhanger to any film that also uses a cliffhanger and is also in a franchise. I mean, the one that comes to mind right now is Fast X. That ends on a cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger is just completely and utterly... Well, it's shit. I don't usually swear on this channel, but it's really... It's an awful ending. I love the cliffhanger to this film. I think it's the best cliffhanger to any movie. You know, even Italian Job, I think it's better than the cliffhanger, which, you know, an Italian Job is quite literally a cliffhanger. I do think it's better than the cliffhanger in that film. And Bilbo's final line where he goes, "What have we done?" He says, "What have we done?" You know, such a brilliant line. And then we cut into "I See Fire" by Ed Sheeran. You know, I see fire burning on the trees. Don't know if I got the lyrics quite correct there, but God, I love that song. And I'm not an Ed Sheeran fan. I don't dislike his music. It's not something. I don't really listen to his music. I don't go out of my way to listen to his music, should I say? But I love his song for this film. I love the song that plays in the end credits, and it actually has, you know, significance to the events that have been taking place in the Hobbit movies. It's about the films, and unlike songs that get in the credits of most movies, even movies which I love, like I love the first Kingsman film, the song that plays in the credits holds no significance to the film whatsoever, whilst the song that plays in the credits for The Desolation of Smaug is perfect. I remember when that started playing, I was thinking, no! You can't end the film there! You can't end the film with Smaug going to Lake Town! Well, what happens next? And I've got to wait a year! That's what I felt like. I remember, oh God, when the film ended in the cinema, I was like, no! I've got to wait a year now to find out what happens to all these characters. And something just dropped there. God knows what it was. Oh, it's just something on the side here. Anyway, yeah. Me getting overexcited talking about this film is making the whole of my bedroom rumble, apparently. And things are starting to fall over. But anyway, yes. I'm sitting at the end of this film going, what happens next? And walking out the cinema feeling this sense of dread because I knew I had to have this same weight that I had for the second Hobbit movie for their third film, and I did. I remember being so excited to watch that third Hobbit movie as well, and I'll talk about that film in more detail when I view it in the next couple of days to weeks on this channel. But yeah, I really love the end of the film, and I absolutely love Desolation of Smaug. I really don't care what anybody says. I think this is, yeah, personally, it's one of my favourite sequels of all time. Because it's darker than the first film, and I love the adventure aspect of it. I love the world building of this film, seeing a different side to Middle Earth than we see in the first Hobbit movie and in the 3 Lord of the Rings films. And I'm not saying this film was as good as Two Towers. I think Two Towers is a better film. Now when I watch all 6 films together, as I do every Christmas/New Year period, I do prefer Two Towers. But if I'm being completely honest, which of course I am doing, which of course I am being, because otherwise what's the point of these reviews? If I'm being completely honest, I'm a little more entertained by Desolation of Smaug over Two Towers. I think Two Towers is a magnificent, and my computer's talking with me now. I think Two Towers is a magnificent piece of cinema. I kind of have more of an enjoyable time than watching Desolation of Smaug because of how much nostalgia I have for this film. I mean, you heard me just talking about the film then and going through it in the quickest way possible as I could. And talking about, oh, I remember this bit in the cinema, I remember this bit in the cinema, I remember this bit in the cinema, I remember this bit in the cinema. And that's because whenever I watch this film, it has this nostalgic effect to me. Like, I spoke about this with the first Hobbit movie. I feel like I'm that kid again, watching these films for the first time in the cinema going, how do you do a film like this? How is this even possible? How am I experiencing what I'm experiencing? Because it is a different experience watching something in a cinema than watching something at home on a streaming service or on DVD. That's just a fact. Anybody who says otherwise is completely insane. You know, it's a very different experience watching something at home. And when I watch Desolation of Smaug at home now, it doesn't have the same effect to me as it did when I watched it in the cinema the first time, because I watched it in the cinema twice. And both times, by the way, perfection. You know, every time I watched it at home, it doesn't have the same effect. But I still have those vivid memories of watching this scene in the cinema and go, oh my God, incredible, you know. And I will always remember the films for that. Yeah, I really, really love this movie. I love it so much. I love how it never really stops. So the theatrical cut of this film keeps moving. We go from one location to another location, to another location, to another location. It keeps moving the plot, and there's not really any down moments. It's constantly engaging, and the characters are engaging, the way that the characters are developed, and the I think the action and the storytelling is more engaging than the first Hobbit movie. I think the first Hobbit movie is brilliant. I love it. I give it a 10 out of 10, but I do think this film is slightly more engaging in terms of its storytelling, and I really love the way everything just keeps moving. Nothing stops, and we get so much more of this story. We actually get to see these characters get to the Lonely Mountain, and I always love it when in a film series, and a film trilogy for this matter, or in one film itself, in just a self-contained movie, when a characters set out to go on a location, set out to go on a journey, set out to get to a location, should I say, and I always love the bit where they get to the location, where they get to their destination. You know, I always love that in any movie, and that might be why I love Desolation of Smaug more than the first film, because we get to the Lonely Mountain and the dwarves get to where they get to their destination, but things don't go according to plan. You think, you know, when they're discussing their plan, when they're discussing their plan to take back the Lonely Mountain, to take back Erebor and defeat Smaug in the first film, you think that it might be quite an easy job. You watch this film and you realise that actually there's a lot more going on here. It's not really about them reclaiming lost land. It's more about Thorin wanting to get back all of his gold. And the way this film starts to touch on that, and the way the third film touches on that, is masterful in my opinion. You know, and I really love all that stuff with Smaug and the Lonely Mountain, because really, if there was any other story, and this is a credit to Tolkien here as well, I suppose, because I think the book, as far as I'm aware, and again I don't know the book really that well at all, as far as I'm aware, the story carries on after Smaug in the book, and here the story carries on after Smaug. Smaug is the MacGuffin. You think that that's the thing everything's been leading to, when actually it's not in the Hobbit trilogy. The Hobbit trilogy leads to something very different. Well, not something very different, I suppose, but it leads to something that's not Smaug, but you think it's going to be Smaug. And I love how Smaug is MacGuffin of these three films, and all the stuff with Smaug. I know I've already spoken about it, but I'm going to say it again. I mean, it's perfection. It really is. And the way Benedict Cumberbatch plays Smaug, you know, people don't know already, what's behind the scenes features on the Hobbit movies. Even if you don't like these films that much, what's the behind the scenes features? Because you see how Benedict Cumberbatch throws himself into the role of Smaug. It is like Andy Serkis whenever he played Gollum in the Lord of the Rings films, or in the first Hobbit movie. He throws himself into that role, and Benedict Cumberbatch does the same here, and he literally does all the movements for Smaug, you know, and it's magnetic to watch. It's quite something, and you see the care and the passion he has for playing this dragon. It's a talking dragon. It shouldn't work if you put that down on paper. Oh yeah, by the way, one of these movies is going to have a talking dragon. It sounds rubbish. It sounds like it's not going to work on paper. But I think because of the way Smaug is written, I think because of the dialogue he's given, and I think because of Benedict Cumberbatch's performance, Smaug works perfectly. God, I love Smaug in these films. I've even got my Lego Smaug down here. I've got him out for this review today. He's slightly worn now. He's a bit worn down now because I got him about 10 years ago when these films came out. He's missing some of the pieces, you know, but still, there is my Lego Smaug. I treasure this item because of how much I love Smaug in these films. Even though he is not the big bad villain in the end of the Hobbit trilogy, God, I love Smaug. I love Smaug so much. And it's, you know, sort of ruined dragons in any other medium for me. Like, I remember when the dragon showed up in Game of Thrones, I'm thinking, yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, Daenerys riding the dragon, that's not bad, it's quite good, and, you know, there's good scenes there. It's not Smaug, though, is it? It ain't Smaug. No other dragon in cinema, for me, will ever be Smaug. I love Benedict Cumberbatch as Smaug, and I really love the fact that Gandalf also has his own journey in this film. He has his own storyline that is, for the most part in this film, separate from the dwarf storyline. We do see him with the dwarves at the start of the movie, but then when the dwarves go into Mirkwood Forest, that's when the two storylines separate. And I love that we get to see Radagast the Brown back, once again played by Sylvester McCoy, the 7th Doctor. Still my favourite Sylvester McCoy performance. You know, he will always be Radagast the Brown to me, and he brings this wacky and sort of silly performance to these films, which I think is needed. You know, I think adds some light comic relief in this film, which fits with the tone. I really love the tones in this film, and I love how we get characters like Radagast the Brown, even like Bilbo Baggins, which it feels like they're not taking it too seriously, if you get what I mean. It feels like they are playing it, you know, slightly different than everybody else's. Ian McKellen always plays it to perfection. He always plays it quite seriously as... Oh, actually, I take that back. He doesn't always play it seriously as Gandalf, but he plays it for the most part serious as Gandalf throughout all 6 Middle-earth films, because he's in every single one of the Hobbit movies and every single one of the Lord of the Rings films. And the same in most of the dwarves, although you get some of the dwarves which are a bit, you know, silly and wacky as well. But the main dwarves which you follow, the likes of Thorin, Balin and Dwalin, and the James Ness, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. A lot of these characters kind of play it for jokes in these films, but at the same time though, I like how you get a lot of these serious moments and a lot of these dark and mysterious moments with Gandalf in this film, in his own storyline. And you got Radagast there just to make things a little better. And I really love how in the extended version of this film, Gandalf has this whole sequence in Dol Guldur. I think that's what the kingdom's called, where the necromancer is and all the orcs like Azog, the pale orc, the big bad orc of the Hobbit trilogy, are all resting, are all staying until they know, well, until they put their plan into action, if you will. I love how Gandalf has a run-in with the orcs at Dol Guldur and sees Thorin's father again. Yes, Thorin's father is in the extended cut of this film. And I'll talk about that in more detail a bit later on, because I do think it is important, and I do think it was a missed opportunity not to put Thorin's father in the theatrical cut of this film. Anyways, as I've already said before, I really love Gandalf's storyline in this film, and I love that we get to see Orlando Bloom back as Legolas. Legolas is my favourite character in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but, you know, I love that character still. And I like that Orlando Bloom plays him differently here. He plays him with a bit more gruff, and he plays him with more anger and more roughness to him. He plays with him a bit more edge, you know. And I like the fact that he plays him with a bit more edge. We get to see a different side of Legolas, because Legolas in the Lord of the Rings films is quite stoic. It doesn't show a lot of emotions. And some might say that's because Orlando Bloom isn't the best of actors. But if you watch these films, I actually think he is better as Legolas in the Hobbit trilogy, because you get to see how so much of the events of these films are irking him, how much getting to him. And actually, I do think it fits with the character in the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well, because I have seen some people say the Legolas character we see in the second 2 Hobbit movies isn't the same Legolas character we see in the 3 Lord of the Rings films. I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, if I remember correctly, and, you know, do correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember correctly, we meet Legolas in the first Lord of the Rings film, Fellowship of the Ring, at Rivendell. And whenever anybody goes Rivendell, they were miraculously recovered. You know, look at Bilbo in the first Lord of the Rings film, or Frodo in the 3rd Lord of the Rings film. Whenever somebody goes to Rivendell, it's like they're a completely different person. Even so, you know, Orlando Bloom looks a little older playing Legolas in these 3 films in the Hobbit trilogy. I can get over that. It's a nitpick, because these films are made after the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He looks older than he does in these 3. He looks older than he did in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but that doesn't bother me. I actually really, really like Orlando Bloom's performance. and I actually really like Orlando Bloom's performance as Legolas in the Hobbit trilogy, and I really like it in this film. I really like how he's reintroduced. You know, he comes into Mirkwood Forest to save the dwarves from the spiders, and he puts it out at Gloin, who is Gimli's father, and says, "Do you not think I won't kill you, dwarf? It would be my pleasure." I always remember that line from the trailer. Again, I've seen the trailer for this film far too many times. I still watch it now at least once every 3 months because of the feels I get watching the trailer for the Desolation of Smaug. And I love that bit in the trailer, and it is in the film as well, where Legolas puts the arrow up at Gimli's father, who is Gloin, and goes, "Do you not think I won't kill you, dwarf? It would be my pleasure." And I love that he says that to Gloin, who, as I've already said twice, is Gimli's father. Because, Legolas and Gimli end up being the best of friends by Return of the King, the final film in the Middle-earth saga. It's just things like that, little additions, Legolas didn't have to say that to Gloin, he could have said that to another dwarf. But Peter Jackson makes him say that to Gloin. I mean, it might be in the books, although from what I've heard, Legolas isn't in the books, although I think he fits in well with these movies. I think he fits in very well in the Hobbit trilogy. But, I love that Peter Jackson and the other writers, I forgot the names of them off the top of my head now, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, got it there. I love that the writers of this film had that moment between Legolas and Gloin. Because Gloin doesn't have many moments in these 3 Hobbit films, but he has that moment, and it's like, it's my wee lad, Gimli. Yeah, really, really love that moment. Tauriel is an interesting character in my opinion, because again, as far as I'm aware, she's not in the Hobbit book. And I have never really liked that character too much. I think she's fine. I think Evangeline Lilly plays her well. It's probably my favourite Evangeline Lilly performance. I don't really like Evangeline Lilly as a wasp. So, whenever I think of Evangeline Lilly, I always think of her as Tauriel in the Hobbit trilogy. And I don't dislike her, actually. I take back what I said. I've never really loved that character, but I enjoy watching that character, and I think Evangeline Lilly does her best playing that character. But when you get to the 3rd Hobbit movie, she's given some lines which I think aren't the best, and I've never really loved that character. But I remember back in secondary school, there was this girl I used to know who was a big fan of these films and said about how much she loved the character, and I was like, well, if it doesn't work for me, that's great, because it's working for somebody else. And I can completely see why that character would. She's just not my favourite character, but I like her addition to the film. And I like the romance between Tauriel and Kili. I don't care what anybody says. That's a good romance in my opinion. I know some people say it's a bit silly and it's a bit melodramatic and things like that, but, I like it. Sue me. And I like the way it progresses. I like how Tauriel is the one who heals Kili, the dwarf that gets shot to during the battle sequence at the end of this film, and then they reunite. And spoiler here, in case you haven't seen the 3rd Hobbit movie, they reunite just as Kili gets stabbed in the 3rd Hobbit film. Love that, and I do like that romance. I like the sort of Romeo and Juliet romance we get in this film, because obviously we get in these films, should I say, we get in this franchise, because in the Lord of the Rings films, you get Aragorn and Arwen. Yeah, I almost forgot a name there. Aragorn and Arwen. And I know that makes more sense, and I know that is in the books too, but at the same time, I also like the elf and dwarf romance. I think it's a good idea, and I like the way it's played in this film, particularly in the scene where Kili and Tauriel are talking about the Feast of Starlight and the music that plays in the background, I'm singing it awfully. I can't actually remember at the top of my head right now, but I was just listening to it earlier today, actually, and I really love that. Thandruil as Legolas' father. Love him as well. He plays him in such a way where every single line he says, it feels like he is speaking Shakespeare. It feels like he's performing Hamlet or something, I really love Lee Pace. I want to see Lee Pace in more, because he hasn't done that much other than the Hobbit trilogy, and he was in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. He played the villain in that film. He hasn't done that much as far as I'm aware, and I really love him in these films. I love the way he plays this King Elf who's so self-obsessed, and the way he's speaking to Thor, and, the quest to kill a dragon, to take back your homeland. I'm butchering up the lines he says, but oh my god, just the way he says it, with such presence and such, the way he says it, something to behold. It is like he's saying Shakespeare. I really love Lee Pace as Thandruil in these films. Also, I've already spoken about Luke Evans as Bard in The Man of Laketown. Bard, a Man of Laketown. That's what the character's name is. Really love that character, and I think Luke Evans plays him well, and I wish Luke Evans got more roles like this where he gets to shine, because I other than the Beauty and the Beast remake, in which he played Gustav, the villain, the one that wants to kill the Beast in that film, other than that film, I can't think of anything else I've seen him in, or anything else where I was actually pretty good. He was in that really bad Three Musketeers film, he was in Dracula Untold, but I didn't really like those movies, you know? I didn't really like them in, I didn't really like him in those films, but I really like him in the Hobbit trilogy, and I wish he got more roles like this, because I think he plays it well, and it's a sort of character where it's kind of like Aragorn, and I'm not saying it's like, I'm not saying the character's nearly as good as Aragorn or anything like that. I'm not saying Luke Evans is as good as Viggo Mortensen playing Aragorn, but at the same time, though, it's kind of like Aragorn, where you can see why so many people would trust him and why so many people would follow him, and why so many people would like him in Lake Town, you know? And then Stephen Fry as the Mayor of Lake Town. Again, I don't think that's his title in the film, but Stephen Fry, who is the Mayor of Lake Town, so I'm going to call him that. He's chewing up the scenery. Love that. And I really love all the new additions to this film. I'm trying to think of anything I've got off the top of my head. Beord. He's not in the film that much. He's a shapeshifter. I also really enjoy that character. I just love the world building. The fact that we get to see all these new characters in this film. And we get to see all these new locations, which, as far as I can remember, are not in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You know, we get to see the Lonely Mountain, but in a different light than we get to see it in the prologue of the first Hobbit movie. Because in the prologue of the first Hobbit movie, the Lonely Mountain, Erebor, looked on as this place of dwarf heaven, you know? And in the second Hobbit film, it looks like Pompeii, you know? It's this place which is completely deserted. It looks like it hasn't been touched in years. It has no life to it whatsoever. I love that, seeing Dol Guldur, and the way it says throughout the film, Dol Guldur, you know, that's the way. I don't know why. There's one of the characters that says it that way in the film, and I always remember it that way. Whenever I think of the place Dol Guldur, it's just Dol Guldur. I always remember it like that. Don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Anyway, I love Dol Guldur and the world building of that. The shapeshifter, Mirkwood Forest, the Woodland Realm, Lake Town, all this world building which fits in with the Middle Earth world, which fits in with Peter Jackson's Middle Earth world, shall I say, and which adds to the expansive and epic scale of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings films. God, I love the world building. I think it's brilliant, and I love the way it's done, and I don't care that this film uses so much CGI, because I do think the CGI still today holds up. I don't care what anybody says, but the CGI with Smaug still looks magnificent. Even though this film is 11 years old now, the CGI with Smaug still looks great. The CGI with the spiders in Mirkwood Forest still blows me away today. The CGI with most of this film still blows me away. The only shots where the CGI looks like CGI in this film, in my opinion, is when you get the wide shot of Lake Town. When you see it for the first time, you get the Howard Shore score, you know, my terrible rendition of the Lake Town theme for this film, but the shot would be firstly Lake Town at its fullest. You can tell it's CGI, but still it doesn't bother me, because world building, and I love that. I love that about this film. It's not the main reason I love this film. I hate when people say, I loved this film because of the world building, and that's the only reason I loved it. It seems to be the only reason they love a film or TV show, because of world building. No, world building isn't the only reason I love Desolation of Smaug. I think I've given many other reasons why I love these films, why I love this film in particular, actually. But at the same time, the world building is a big factor as to why I love this film. It's a big contributing factor as to why I love this movie. Also, I love the epic scale of this film and how Peter Jackson, say what you will about the Hobbit trilogy, love, hate these films, or, whatever. Think and say whatever you want about the Hobbit trilogy. But Peter Jackson, he doesn't just make a film. He makes a movie. And you can see the money on screen. I can't tell you how many times nowadays, just recently with Argyle. I liked Argyle. I thought it was, okay. That movie cost $200 million. You cannot tell that if you watch that film. Whilst, I don't know what the budget is on Desolation of Smaug. Should look it up actually. Desolation of Smaug budget. By the way, I love the posters for these films. $217 to $250 million. Okay, it had quite a big budget. A far bigger budget than I thought it was going to have. But, you can tell the money's on the screen. Yeah, there's a lot of CGI. But at least it's on the screen, and I love it when a film looks as expensive as it was to make. Love that about Desolation of Smaug. Also, I should talk about the extended edition for this film. So if you watched my Lord of the Rings reviews, and if you watched or listened to my Hobbit review, I talk about the extended versions of all these Middle-earth films. And I'll talk about the extended edition of this film as well. And with the Lord of the Rings films, the extended editions are the definitive editions. Anybody who says otherwise has clearly not watched the extended versions, because they add a far more rich experience to those movies. With the Hobbit trilogy, well, with the first Hobbit movie actually, the theatrical cut, the original cut of the film, which was released in cinemas, is the definitive cut. The extended stuff in the first Hobbit movie, I've already spoken about it in my review of that film. The extended stuff isn't bad. If you're a fan of the Hobbit movies, and if you're a fan of the first Hobbit film, then it adds some nice details in there. Some details which are completely unnecessary, though, like dwarves washing themselves naked in a fountain at Rivendell. Yes, that does actually happen. It isn't a dream I had. I'm not making that up. There's some moments in the extended edition of the first Hobbit movie which definitely aren't needed. But with the second Hobbit movie, if somebody was to ask me if the extended edition was the definitive edition for this film, I would say both yes and no. Here's what I mean. No, it's not the definitive edition in the first half of this film. In the first half of the film, there's extended stuff with Bjorn, there's extended stuff with Mirkwood Forest, where you see the dwarves slowly going insane in Mirkwood Forest. And I think that's done better in the theatrical cut. You see more scenes with them just going more and more insane. It's like, we don't need this, just get the bit with the spiders. And there's more in the scene between Thorin and Gandalf, the flashback scene that opens this film. There's a bit more there about how you think Thorin's father is still alive. But I don't really like all that extended stuff, because when I was rewatching it over the Christmas/New Year period, just after New Year actually, that's when I rewatched this film, I was thinking, yeah, this extended stuff is slowing things down. Just get to the spiders, get to the chases, get to the action sequences, get to the plot moving more. And I actually think that for the first half of this film, the extended edition is not the definitive edition. However, when you get to the second half of this film, the extended edition becomes a lot more important. Once you get all this stuff with Lake Town, it's when everything starts to become, all the extended stuff, all the extended editions, all the extended scenes become a lot more important. For example, you get a scene between Gandalf and Thorin's father, which I think is very important and adds a lot. It adds some emotional weight to Thorin's storyline, and I like that scene quite a lot. And on top of that, during this scene between Gandalf and Thorin's father, which is taking place in Dol Guldur, you have these scenes in Dol Guldur where you see all the orcs going after Gandalf. You see Gandalf face off against Azog and have this more extended scene with the Necromancer, which turned out to be Sauron. And if people don't know already, that's another character which Benedict Cumberbatch voices. Not only does Benedict Cumberbatch play Smaug in this film, he also voices the Necromancer. I don't think he did the same physical movements for the Necromancer as he did for Smaug, because the Necromancer is in the end just a voice. But, you know, the evil sorcerer that Gandalf faces off in this film and sees the visions of Sauron through, if I'm getting my, if I remember the scene correctly, I'm pretty sure I am. The evil sorcerer that Gandalf faces off against is voiced by Sauron. But anyway, going back into what I was saying, that whole Dol Guldur sequence with Gandalf facing off against the orcs is in the theatrical cut, as far as I remember, but it's extended in the extended edition. And I think that all the stuff at Dol Guldur with Gandalf in the extended cut of this film is important and does add more. And I like the fact that all the stuff there was extended and it feels purposeful to the plot. Unlike the stuff at the start of the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug, the stuff later on with Gandalf at Dol Guldur, which is extended, feels necessary and adds more to his storyline. You know, and the sequence is also really well directed. You know, I think Peter Jackson has an eye for horror, clearly with his early filmography when he was directed such horror movies as Meet the Feebles, Brain Dead, and so on and so on and so on. And all the stuff with Gandalf at Dol Guldur in the extended edition shows his horror roots seeping through, and I really like that. There isn't actually much else. That's the biggest thing, the addition of Thorin's father and Gandalf reuniting. But there is a bit more Lake Town as well, where it explains how Bard managed to smuggle all these 13 dwarfs. Was it? Yeah, 13. No, yes, 12. Is it 12 dwarfs and Bilbo? Whatever. You see how Bard manages to smuggle all these dwarfs and Bilbo to his house without anybody in Lake Town noticing. In the extended cut, you do see some people in Lake Town notice, but they managed to hide them from the authoritative figures in Lake Town, such as Stephen Fry's character, Alfred, and some of the other authoritative figures. And I do think that's needed, because otherwise, when you watch the theatrical cut, you know, I remember watching that bit in the cinema when all the dwarves get to Bard's house in Lake Town, thinking, wait, how are they not noticed? How many dwarfs are there? Bilbo's there as well. There's quite a lot of dwarfs. And Bilbo, this hobbit, and no one noticed them. Yeah, I do think that is needed as well. And I do think the second half of the extended edition to the Desolation of Smaug adds a lot to this film. The first half, though, the extended stuff isn't bad again. I'm not saying it's bad, but it slows the film down a lot more. There's a lot more at the beginning with Thorin and Gandalf, and I just want to, when I was rewatching it, you know, during the New Year period, I was just thinking, get to Bilbo's reintroduction, you know, can we just get to that already? And there's a bit more with Bjorn, the shapeshifter, and it's not really needed. There's a funny sequence where Gandalf is introducing Bjorn to all the dwarfs. It's quite a funny sequence. Again, it's not bad, but it's just not needed. And the same with this extended stuff where you see all the dwarves slowly going insane in Mirkwood Forest. I'm like, get to the spiders already! In the first half of Desolation of Smaug, the extended edition is not needed. But in the second half, I would say it is. I think the scene where Gandalf reunites with Thorin's father works very well. I think all the stuff with Gandalf at Dol Guldur, it's extended in the extended edition, works very well as well. And, you know, the little addition of explaining how the dwarves managed to get through Lake Town without anybody noticing is also needed, you know. I think those additions to the film make it, I'm not going to say they make, do they make it better? Yeah, I do think they make it better. I think the additions in the extended edition, in the second half of the extended edition to Two Towers, no, I'm not talking about Two Towers, wrong Middle-earth sequel. The additions in the extended edition in the second half of the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug are needed, but not the additions in the first half. And if someone was to ask me, should I watch You know, should I watch the extended edition of Desolation of Smaug, or should I watch the theatrical cut? Personally, I would say watch the theatrical cut up to the introduction of Lake Town. Then change this to the extended edition and you'll get a lot more. But if you don't have access to the extended edition, just watch the theatrical cut. As much as I love the scenes between Thorin's father and Gandalf, you can check them out on YouTube. And if you're not too invested in these films either, if you're just there for the action and the story you want to get to Smaug, it does slow things down leading up to Smaug. And as much as I do really love all the extended stuff in the second half of this film, I still loved the film anyway, watching it in the cinema. I still love watching the theatrical cut in the cinema, so it's not really a big thing for me. Yeah. If someone was to say to me, should I watch the theatrical cut or the extended cut of Desolation of Smaug, I would, gun to my head, I'd have to say the theatrical edition. Although, you could also do what I do, or what I'm probably going to do in the future whenever I watch this film, and that is watch the theatrical edition for the first half of Desolation of Smaug. Then when they get to Lake Town, change the disc over to the extended edition, and I think, again, you'll have a better experience watching those movies. Watching this film. So yeah, that's my opinion on the extended edition for Desolation of Smaug. However, I've got a different opinion on the extended edition for the Battle of the Five Armies, the third Hobbit movie. And I'll get onto that when I talk about that film in more detail in the next couple of days to weeks on this channel. But anyway, is that everything I wanted to discuss about Desolation of Smaug? I mean, there's a Howard Shore musical score, and Howard Shore never does any wrong with these movies. Say we will about these movies, again, love them, hate them, whatever, but Howard Shore's musical scores were always on point, and I think his musical score of this film is perfection once again. It's very different than his musical score for the first Hobbit movie, and I like that because this film is darker. Similar to Two Towers, this is a darker sequel than its predecessor, and for that reason we get darker music, and I love Smaug's theme, you know. Ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. I don't actually think I'm singing the thing correctly there. You know, da-da, bum, 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. I think I sang the theme relatively well there. It started to come back to me as I was singing it, and I really love that piece of music. It's hauntingly beautiful, like many of the visuals in this film. There's this sense. One thing I really love about Desolation of Smaug, which I haven't mentioned yet, is how the film got a sense of dread. This sense that something bad is going to happen throughout the entirety of the film, and then something does at the end. Smaug escapes a lonely mountain and is going to destroy Lake Town. If you've seen the third film, you know how the events unfold, and it's not a happy ending. Let's just say that. And I really love how the Howard Shore musical score perfectly encapsulates the feel of dread with this film. Perfectly encapsulates that something bad is going to happen, and the musical score, I mean, I listen to it daily. I mean, that's just me. I'm a geek when it comes to musical scores, particularly with great musical scores as this one is, and I really love his score for Desolation of Smaug. Right from the opening with the track The Quest for Erebor, which opens the film, you know, da 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 da, as you see New Line Cinema in the opening titles of this movie, and then the theme that plays for the spiders in the spider sequence when the dwarves are facing off against the spiders in Mirkwood. Love all of that, and then love the music that plays with the barrel chase sequence. God, I love the music for this film. God, I love it. And Howard Shore does no wrong once again. And the film itself is... it's brilliant in my opinion. I love this film. I really love it. And maybe I love it because of how nostalgic couldn't pronounce a word there, how nostalgic I find it when I watch it now. And maybe I love it just because I love spending time with these characters and spending time in Peter Jackson's Middle-earth and the way he immerses you into this world. And maybe I love it just because of Smaug as well. But at the same time, though, I don't care. For me, whenever I watch this film, it is a thrilling ride from start to finish. It is like one giant Middle-earth roller coaster that doesn't stop going. And I mean that in the best way possible. You know, sometimes, and I've done this as well, sometimes people say that this film felt like a theme park ride, and not in a good way. But Desolation of Smaug feels like a theme park ride, and I mean that in the best way possible. Right at the boat, you have Smaug. It's like the end of a roller coaster. Smaug and all this stuff with Bilbo and Smaug. And one thing I haven't really spoken about is Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins. I love him even more in this film. You know, I really love the scenes between the scenes where he's in Mirkwood Forest and he's facing off against the spiders, and he slips at one point when the spider is trying to take him, and it goes, "Oh God, not again!" And just the little moments of comic relief, which I don't know if it's Peter Jackson's writing or the other writers that wrote the screenplay for this film, or whether it's Martin Freeman adding that stuff in. But I think it works perfectly, and I love Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins. I love him in these films. I think it's perfect casting, and when he saves all the dwarves from their prisons in the Woodland Realm, and they're like, "We're never going to reach the Lonely Mountain," and then Bilbo goes, "Not stuck in hay, you're not." God, lines like that. Or even the line, actually my favourite line in this film, which I can't believe I haven't mentioned, is when the spider's going back to this whole spider sequence in Mirkwood Forest. One of my favourite sequences in any, you know, medieval fantasy movie. In any fantasy movie ever even, you get this spider that Bilbo, I've got the sword here, Bilbo stabs with his sword, and goes, "Ugh," and then the spider says, "Stings, it stings," and then Bilbo goes, "Sting, not a bad name." Martin Freeman delivers it far better than I do, but I really love that moment too. So many one-liners with Bilbo Baggins in this film, which are so well delivered by Martin Freeman, and again, perfect casting. And the way the relationship between Bilbo and Thorin progresses throughout this film, again, it's just perfect. I mean, I really, really love this movie. It's not The Two Towers. It's not Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. But at the same time, though, it was never going to be. And I do think it's a very, very good sequel. A very worthy sequel to the first Hobbit movie, which was my Fellowship of the Ring. This was my Two Towers growing up. I can't believe I haven't said that yet. It's an easy connection to make, and I just didn't make the connection. You know, this was my Two Towers growing up. And I still watch this now, and it brings a smile to my face. It's really something special, this movie, in my opinion. And I love it because it made me love the cinema-going experience even more than the first Hobbit movie. It opened my eyes up to the fact that, yes, sequels can be even greater than the first film and can be just as good of an experience watching in the cinema. Love this film, and boy do I love Smaug. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, yeah, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Getting more, so you can see more of the body there. Yes, I'm going to give this film a 10 out of 10. There is not one thing I would change about it. You know, there really isn't. There isn't really much else I haven't said about this film, as far as I can remember. Just thinking off the top of my head right now. No, I'm pretty sure for the first time we're not going to have an add-on with this review. Watch me now put an add-on in this exact moment. If I didn't put an add-on in, that means this review, I was happy with everything I said, which you don't usually have with me in these reviews. How many times I put an add-on with review? How many times do I put in add-on? How many times I put in add-ons with my film reviews? It's kind of mental. But anyway, love this film, and it, for me, you know, it's my favourite Hobbit movie. It is my favourite Hobbit movie because of everything I've already mentioned. I really love how it just develops the story, and we get to see Smaug, you know, and it delivers on all the Smaug stuff. I really, 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 really love it. You know, and I don't really have anything else to say about this film. Yeah, I think it's the best of the Hobbit movies. And, you know, one last thing I will say, actually. is I know some people say that the second Hobbit movie is just set up, and I understand why they say that. You know, some people say the second Hobbit movie is just set up and the third Hobbit movie is just payoff. I understand why people say that, but if you watch the extended stuff to this film, it has a lot more payoff than the theatrical cut. Again, all the stuff with Thorin's father, which is touched on in the prologue to the first film. And there is more stuff as well, but I'd also argue that the theatrical cut is not just set up because they get to Smaug, you know? That was teased, that was set up in the first film, and set up very well in my opinion. And we get to see them interact with Smaug, we get to see the dwarves and Thorin interact with Smaug, get to see Bilbo interact with Smaug, and his role gets fulfilled, you know, as the smuggler, as a burglar, not the smuggler, sorry, I was thinking of Star Wars for a sec there, because I'm looking at a Death Star poster as I'm doing this review. Yeah, we get to see Bilbo fulfill his role as the, I just forgot it right now, the burglar hobbit, as the trolls say in the first Hobbit movie. We get to see him fulfill his role. There is payoff in this film. It was also set up, but, you know, that's the second film in a trilogy for you. I don't really care about the fact that this film has a lot of setup for the third film, because, well, not to go into too much detail, although I will say this, I don't like the third Hobbit movie as much as the second, but still, I think the payoff in the third Hobbit movie is very good. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, as I've already spoken about, I love this film. I love Smaug. I think all the stuff in the second half of the extended edition to this film is very, very good. And I really love Gandalf's storyline. Love seeing Legolas back. Love seeing Thandruil there. Love seeing Legolas' father. The fact that we got to see him in these films. All the stuff with the world building, the look of the Woodland Realm. I love this film. I've been going on about it for way too long, but heck, that's what happens when I talk about a film that I love on this channel. I speak about it for way too long. God knows how long my review of Battle of the Five Armies is going to be, but still, I love it. And it's my favourite Hobbit movie, and I look forward to rewatching it every Christmas / New Year. So yes, I think The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is maybe, yeah, an even better film than The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. And so, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is a 10 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe it's your least favourite of the Hobbit trilogy, or maybe you're like me and it's your favourite. Whatever your thoughts are on The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast, and look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon, but, and yes, you are right in seeing that I have 3 rings right now. I'll talk about that a bit more in my third Hobbit film review, but I will see you guys again soon. But, bye for now. Bye.